In the headlines, the outcome of Wednesday's local election show that the Korean people don't have total confidence in either the ruling or opposition party. But the ruling camp's better-than-expected results will give momentum to President Park's economic and social reform drive. Korea strongly protests. Lawmakers and officials rally in Tokyo, claiming Korea-controlled Dokdo Island is Japanese territory. Seoul adds such denials of Tokyo's imperialistic past will further strain relations between the two sides. The growth of Koreans' real output at home and abroad slows down in the first quarter of this year, but analysts say seasonal factors mainly contributed to the smaller expansion. Thank you for joining us. It's Thursday, June 5th here in Seoul, and I'm Choi Yu-sun. The results of Wednesday's local elections are out, and both main political parties here in the nation have reason to celebrate. In some sense, the ruling party is seen as having fared well, as it avoided a huge backlash from the recent ferry disaster, while the main opposition could find some consolation in winning the nation's most high-profile race, that being for Seoul City Mayor. Park Ji-won has the details.
The election results for the 17 heads of local governments show the ruling Saenuri Party victorious in 8 regions and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy in 9. Although Seoul was taken by the main opposition camp, the ruling party fared well in the metropolitan area. The party won the hotly contested Incheon mayoral race and Korea's most heavily populated province of Gyeonggi-do. However, the main opposition party claimed victories in the central region in both Chungcheongdo provinces, the new administrative city of Sejong, and Daejeon City. Considering these regions traditionally lean more moderate conservative, the main opposition party will be buoyed by its strong showing there. The nation's southwest and southeast regions didn't veer from their traditional preferences, although rival party or independent candidates had strong showings in the Liberals' power base of Gwangju and the southern port city of Busan. As for Seoul, incumbent Mayor Park Won-soon from the main opposition party beat his rival Chung Mong-jun.
This is a victory of all citizens who called for a fundamental change following the Seoul ferry disaster. It's a victory for all citizens who work honestly.
I want to thank the citizens of Seoul. I humbly accept the choice of the people. I hope Mayor Park will lead Seoul by taking on the difficult situations facing the city.
The Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces were the last 2 provinces to confirm winners due to very tight races. In Gyeonggi-do, the ruling party's Nam Kyung-pil edged to victory in the governor's race against his rival by less than 1 percentage point. In Gangwon-do, incumbent Governor Choi Mun-soon also scored a tight win. During the local elections, 17 education chiefs were also elected, 13 of which are considered progressive. Seoul's new education superintendent will be Cho Hee-yeon, a liberal professor, after beating out 2 strong conservative candidates. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
And there was no clear winner between the main rival parties in the June 4th local elections, and that can be interpreted in a number of ways. And Na Yeon-kyung reports on what analysts are reading into the results.
The public raised the red flag against the ruling party while keeping the opposition on its toes. Experts say the local election results reflect public anger toward the current administration's handling of April's Seoul ferry disaster that claimed hundreds of lives. But they add, not handing over a landslide victory to the opposition means people are willing to give the Park Geun-hye administration a second chance.
We thank the people who have supported us and given us another chance. We will continue to carry out reforms within our party.
By snatching 9 of the 17 seats up for grabs, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy has gained an upper hand for now. But the very narrow win, despite favorable conditions, indicates that the public is still wary of fully trusting the opposition party.
We will do our best to shed light on the truths behind the ferry disaster and focus on establishing fundamental solutions.
The upcoming July by-elections will be another opportunity for the rival parties to gauge public sentiment. Whether the ruling party can strike a chord with the public through President Park's soon-to-be-conducted cabinet reshuffle will be key in regaining support. The NPAD, in the meantime, will have to show and prove that its co-leadership is solid in order to avoid losing momentum. Na Hyun-kyung, ARIRANG News.
In politics, it's never too early to look ahead to the next election. The next big one here in Korea comes in 2017, when the nation will choose its next president. Our Sun Jung-in tells us how Wednesday's election results may have provided some hints about who might appear on the ballot.
Incumbent Seoul Mayor Park Won-soon's landslide victory has set the fates of two political big shots on opposite courses. Although Mayor Park has made it clear he has no intention to run in the next presidential race, some say the main opposition party may not have any better options when 2017 comes around.
The second phase of Park Won-soon's administrative policies will focus on integration. I will move in step with my supporters as well as with my opponents.
Speaking of opponents, Park's competitor and seven-term lawmaker Chung Mong-jun was defeated, a first in his 26-year political career, losing momentum toward becoming the ruling party's next presidential candidate. The beneficiary of his loss just may be Gyeonggi-do Governor-elect Nam Kyung-pil, who now rises near the top of the list of possible ruling party candidates in the 2017 race.
This will be done with President Park Geun-hye and the residents of Gyeonggi-do. I will give my all for renovating this province and Korea.
Another name being tossed around as potential presidential candidate from the ruling party is Jeju Island Governor-elect Won Hee-ryong. Won, along with Nam, are seen as young politicians who will help the ruling party transition from its older generation base. As for the main opposition party, Chungcheongnam-do Governor re-elect An Hee-jung is garnering attention. After serving time in jail for accepting illegal funds in the 2002 presidential race, An, one of late President Roh Moo-hyun's closest confidants, won the Chungcheongnam-do governor seat in 2010. Sun Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
The Korean people exercised their democratic right to vote in record numbers for local elections on Wednesday. So what do they have to say about the results one day later? Our Shin Se-min went out to find out.
Public reaction to the results of Wednesday's local election has been somewhat divided, but all seem to agree that April's ferry accident was a deciding factor.
For this local election, I was greatly influenced by the Seoul ferry tragedy when casting my vote. I want more responsible leaders to represent me and my thoughts.
Simply put, I voted because I want a just society for all. Many politicians seem to ignore the voices of the people. Take the Seoul ferry accident, for example. Instead of leaders trying to save face, I want them to realize what they are missing and have already missed.
The elections were for local representatives, but were seen as a barometer of public sentiment following the ferry disaster. But each voter entered the polling booth with other issues in mind that matter to them.
Thinking of my mom, I want stronger support for working mothers. The disadvantages that minorities face should be addressed, especially for women and those that are weak.
Looking at the big picture, regardless of the political party, I just hope that those who have been elected keep their promises and keep their ears open to the people.
I believe humble, honest politicians make the best politicians. I hope all of those representing the people think twice and even 3 times before making pledges. Instead of following trends and going after fame, I think the elected officials should look toward making the community and the country a better place.
The results are out and the people have spoken. The nation now waits to see if those they've chosen to represent them live up to expectations. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
And President Park Geun-hye has vowed to increase the pace of both Korea's economic recovery and her reform drive. At a luncheon with those of national merit and their families on Thursday, the president said she'll push ahead with her 3-year economic innovation plan and lay the foundation for a peaceful reunification with North Korea. In the aftermath of a deadly ferry accident in April, President Park also pledged to root out ill practices in society to make Korea a safer place to live. Following the ruling party's better-than-expected results in this week's local elections, the presidential office had said the administration would do its best to honor the collective voice of the Korean public and bring about reforms to the nation. Although the overall Korean economy continues on the path to recovery, the gross national income is not keeping pace. Last quarter's figure did climb, but at its slowest rate in 2 years. Hwang Ji-hye explains why.
It looks like the population's purchasing power in Korea is lagging behind the nation's economic growth. The Bank of Korea said Thursday that the nation's gross national income rose a mere 0.5% in the first quarter from the previous one, the slowest pace of expansion in 2 years. But the central bank says that the slower growth is largely coming from seasonal factors.
Above all, smaller dividends earned by Korean companies from their investments overseas compared to the fourth quarter last year resulted in slower G&I growth.
A country's gross national income includes not just the domestic output, but also the income received from abroad. And with companies paying dividends in respect of their financial year that often ends at the year end, the gross national income usually drops in the first quarter compared to a quarter earlier. Overall economic activities remained to be on a track to recovery as the nation's gross domestic product grew 0.9% in the January to March period from the previous 3 months. That matches up with the growth of around 1% that the economy has posted over recent quarters. From a year earlier, Asia's fourth largest economy grew 3.9% in the first quarter this year, accelerating from 3.7% growth in the fourth quarter. The central bank expects the domestic economy to grow 4% for all of this year. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Korea and New Zealand will sit down for a fresh round of free trade negotiations next week. Korea's trade ministry says the meeting, the 7th of its kind, will take place in Auckland from June 8th to the 13th. The two sides will seek to narrow their differences on a range of issues, including intellectual property rights, country of origin, services, and investment. The previous round of talks was held in March. In a common refrain, Tokyo has renewed its claims to Korea-controlled Dokdo Island, and Seoul, in response, has condemned them. Japan's vice cabinet minister, along with Japanese lawmakers and officials, attended a rally in Tokyo on Thursday, calling for a resolution to the Dokdo dispute. But Korea's foreign ministry says there's nothing to dispute, as the rocky islets of Dokdo are and have always been Korean territory. The ministry said in a statement that Tokyo should stop making provocative claims over the island. It also said Japan's relations with Korea, as well as with other countries in the region, would continue to suffer so long as it continues to deny its imperialistic past and atrocities. Isolated from much of the world, North Korea appears to be putting more energy in closer ties with its traditional allies, Russia and China. The North State-run Nodong Shinmun Daily earlier this week gave high marks to a summit last month between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping. The Daily said their bolstered political and security ties would deal a blow to the United States. Last week, the paper ran another story calling for closer relations between Moscow and Beijing as a counter to Washington's pivot to Asia. The new head of a U.S. organization that promotes relations with Asia says North Korea's nuclear program and humanitarian aid should be dealt with as separate issues. Frank Januzzi, president of the Marine and Mike Mansfield Foundation, said that people-centered diplomacy through informal meetings is the key to approaching Pyongyang at this point. He also said he's not optimistic about a swift resumption of the six-party talks on the North's denuclearization, adding that Pyongyang does not seem to be open to negotiations. Januzzi was a key member of U.S. President Barack Obama's first presidential campaign team, serving as the director for policies related to the Korean Peninsula. Dozens of American companies have apparently been doing business with North Korea, this despite strict U.S. sanctions on the regime. Bloomberg reported Wednesday that 68 companies listed the central bank of the DPRK as being in their supply chain in filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission. IBM and Hewlett-Packard were among those mentioned. A spokesperson for Hewlett-Packard said investigations have been underway since January to determine whether its products contain North Korean minerals, but said none have been detected yet. IBM's filing said its products may use gold processed in the north. Joint military drills between South Korea and the U.S. forces are a regular occurrence on South Korean soil, but they've never been conducted on American soil before until now. South Korea said 4 weeks of joint drills will run at Fort Irwin in California from Monday to July 1st. 170 Korean members of an infantry and special forces unit will take part. A Korean military official said the goal for the exercise is to enhance joint combat interoperability by carrying out joint war missions and small unit combats. And now for the latest on the Seoul ferry disaster. One body was recovered this Thursday morning, raising the death toll to 289 after more than 2 weeks without much progress. But it was nowhere near or inside the ferry. The body of a 44-year-old male was found in waters 35 kilometers northwest of the accident site. Identified only by his surname Cho, the man was headed to Jeju-do Island with his wife and 2 sons, but only his 7-year-old son was rescued on the day of the sinking on April 16th. Search teams had resumed underwater operations Wednesday to locate those still missing, as families of the victims criticized that not enough was being done to recover or prevent bodies from drifting away. The Chinese government has lashed out at the United States over comments it made about the recent anniversary of the Tiananmen Square protests. And with more on that story, we now turn to our Paul Lee at the News Center. Paul, the anniversary of this historic democratic movement came and went on Wednesday, and it looks like Beijing is still cracking down on any reference to the event, even from Washington.
That's right, Yu-sun. China lodged a formal complaint to the U.S. after the White House urged its communist leaders to face up to history and admit to the killings of protesters during the Tiananmen massacre. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said it was, quote, deeply dissatisfied with the remarks that they say gravely interferes with China's internal affairs. In light of the 25th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square protest on Wednesday, the White House honored those who lost their lives in the brutal crackdown and said they would always support the fundamental rights of democracy. Meanwhile, over 100,000 people took part in massive candlelight vigils in Hong Kong last night to remember the bloody suppression of democracy in Beijing. Leading up to the anniversary, the Chinese government cracked down heavily on any mention of the massacre, prohibiting public discussion and censoring online references. It was back in 1989 on June 4th when hundreds of pro-democracy activists were removed by force and killed for protesting in the busy city square.
And diplomacy is in high gear in Brussels this week as heads of G7 nations have resumed their 2-day summit for the first time since expelling Russia from the group. Paul, what's on the top of the agenda for these talks?
Well, the discussions have been focused on finding a solution to the crisis in Ukraine. This involves measures to return stability to the eastern part of the country, where fighting between the military and pro-Russian forces continue. They issued a joint statement condemning Russia for its intervention in Ukraine and warned of additional economic sanctions should Moscow fail to dial back the violence. The world's leading industrialized nations continue their meeting on Thursday, also focusing on economics, trade, climate, and energy policy.
The G7 has indicated that dialogue, de-escalation, and the process born from the elections must be encouraged. At the same time, the G7 is ready to intensify and put in place targeted sanctions if necessary. The aim is to ensure avoiding another confrontation process.
The Group of Seven also took time to address concerns over China's moves in the South and East China Seas. In a joint statement, the leaders said they oppose any attempt by any party to assert territorial or maritime claims through the use of intimidation. Although the statement did not specify or refer to any state by name, it was not so a veiled reference to China's maritime disputes with Vietnam, the Philippines, Japan, and others.
Moving on, health authorities in Saudi Arabia have reported a sharp rise in the number of deaths from the MERS virus as more infected patients emerge around the world. Paul, what exactly are we dealing with?
Well, the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS, is caused by a coronavirus that causes pneumonia-like symptoms like coughing and fever and has been fatal in 1/3 of reported cases. Saudi Arabia's health ministry recalculated its number of MERS deaths on Thursday, following a review of figures going back to 2012. The death toll now stands at 283, with the latest fatality on Tuesday. The announcement came a day after the government sacked the deputy health minister, who had been criticized by international scientists for his handling of the viral outbreak.
So things are, a lot of interventions have been done by the Ministry of Health based on recommendation of its National Scientific Committee, which meets and follows, the status of what's happening as far as new cases, and a lot of infection control interventions were implemented.
A total of 689 MERS cases have now been confirmed in the country. However, the health ministry has not yet revealed any details related to the newly reported casualties. MERS is considered a deadlier cousin of the SARS virus, which erupted in Asia in 2003.
And before we let you go, more than 100 veterans have been honored at a ceremony in France to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the D-Day landings. Can you tell us more about these heroes who took part in this historic assault?
Well, the World War II veterans who were decorated with medals included former American, British, Canadian, Norwegian, and French soldiers. They were part of the Allied troops in 1944, which mounted history's largest amphibious assault on the beaches of Normandy in northwestern France to end the Second World War. Over 2,500 Allied soldiers died on the day of the invasion. Many of the veterans who attended the ceremony in the French city of Caen shared their memories of that fateful day.
After so many people made such a big sacrifice, and young men, they should be remembered what they did. And I feel that a place like Caen here is a good picture of how the French must have suffered when this town got flattened by the RAF. It must have been terrible for them.
The ceremony is part of a series of events that are taking place this week to mark the 70th anniversary of D-Day. A major commemoration will be held on Friday with the arrival of 17 heads of state, including U.S. President Barack Obama, Britain's Queen Elizabeth, and Russia's Vladimir Putin. Yusun?
All right, Paul, thank you for that update, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours. And And time now to get a check on the weather with our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, how are things shaping up for the long weekend?
Yusan, mostly early summer conditions are forecast over the 3-day weekend. Now first, taking a look at our current conditions, parts of both Gyeongsang-do provinces are seeing light passing sporadic drizzles and up to 5 millimeters may fall through later tonight. Now June 6th is Memorial Day here in Korea, which is a national holiday, and it looks like we will get good conditions for outdoor activities. But keep in mind that us here in the central regions may get light drizzles, so an umbrella will definitely come in handy. On to Friday's readings. Well, here it is. Daegu and Gwangju reach 28 degrees, while Busan hits 24. On to other places. Daejeon jumps to 29 degrees. Dokdo and Mount Kumgang make it to 18 and 20. Well, holidays are great to spend quality time with friends and family, but let's not forget to commemorate our heroes. That's all the updates I have for you at this hour, and I'll be back with more after 10.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. I'm Choi Yoo-sun in Seoul, and join us again for more news updates on our primetime news at 10 p.m. Korea time.